Hi, welcome everyone. We'll get started in a minute or two. All right. It's 12:02, so I'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll still have some folks joining up a little bit late. But I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Callie Hoagland. I am the Associate Director of Distributed Generation Solutions at Virginia Energy, and I'm the lead on Solar for All. I also want to introduce a couple of folks on my team who are also on the call. Bettina Bergu is the Director of Affordability and Competition, and she will be helping moderate questions later. And Erin Berryhill is our solar program manager, who also supports Solar for All. So as we get started, I just want to call out that we have a mixture of industry folks and Virginia residents or potential program participants on the call. So I'm going to try to level set, provide some technical information, but also how this could apply to residents. And I also want to acknowledge that this webinar is going to be more of a one-way engagement, I guess. You might notice that you don't have access to your mic or your camera yet. We'll open that up later when we have time for questions. And this is not how we want our program to be moving forward. We want to be engaging and listening to you all, but we felt like it was important to introduce ourselves and our current work plan as we move into the planning period to make sure that we all have the same information. And I'll be highlighting opportunities for stakeholder listening sessions and engagement towards the end of the presentation today. And last note before I jump in, this presentation will be recorded and shared with those that are on the webinar, and we hope to be able to post later as well. All right, so I will jump in. So on our agenda for today, I'll just start off by talking about what is Solar for All, the federal program, and then I'll go through an overview of Virginia's Solar for All program and our specific sub-programs within our grant. Then I'll go through the timeline for implementation, as well as our planning period timeline and opportunities for engagement. And at the end, we'll have time for public comment and questions. I do just want to note that everything I present today is still subject to change. We're still working through edits with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Oh, can you not see slides? Can everyone else see slides?
I can see your slides, Callie, and looks like some other folks can, but some cannot.
Interesting.
Okay, mostly yes.
Okay.
So the
Kelly,
answer
Um,
is yes.
my suggestion would be, I think you're using like the Teams.
mhm.
So if you just like unshare and just share your screen versus sharing through Teams.
Okay. Let's see. Stop presenting. And then share my screen. Sorry about that, everyone. I can start from the beginning. The only thing is I do have notes, so hopefully I can still see my notes. Okay, maybe I'll pull up my notes on another tab. Give me 1 second, everyone. Sorry about that. Can everyone see my screen now? Okay, great. 1 second. All right, so this was just the title page, so you didn't miss much there. Um, and then the agenda is here. So again, going over Solar for All, Virginia Solar for All program and our sub-programs, timeline for implementation, opportunities for engagement, and then questions at the end. And as I was saying, I do just want to note that we are still in edits with the Environmental Protection Agency. And we will have a year-long planning period that we will be working with all of you and more to define and edit our current work plan. So just note that what I present today is still subject to those changes. And also, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all of the past engagement and support that we've gotten from many of you on this webinar. We've gotten over 90 letters of support when we were working on our Solar for All application. And so we're really excited to continue to build on those ideas and revisit them as we move forward. Okay, so jumping in, what is Solar for All? So Solar for All is a part of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, or GGRF, through the Environmental Protection Agency. And the objectives of the GGRF include reducing climate and air pollution, delivering benefits to low-income and disadvantaged communities, mobilizing funding to spur additional deployment of affordable solar energy. Just so you all know, the funding comes from appropriations made in the Inflation Reduction Act, which also funded the NCIF and the CCIA. And if you want more information on any of those other funds, feel free to go to the EPA's website. Okay, so first I'll note Virginia's program is also the state of Virginia has been awarded $156 million in funding as a part of the Solar for All program. Our work plan currently includes several different sub-programs to deploy solar in Virginia, including single-family and multifamily ownership, direct ownership, and third party for single family. Multifamily would be solar and potentially plus storage, community and shared solar. We'll have a grid infrastructure and interconnection fund and workforce development, as well as marketing, education, and outreach. It's important to note that the EPA does require meaningful benefits for our Solar for All program, including requiring at least a 20% bill savings for the average participant. The funding for the Solar for All program is aimed at households that earn less than 80% area median income. And if you're a resident on this call and you're wondering if you qualify as 80% median income, it varies by locality and family size, but you can look up HUD, HUDAMI, if you're curious about your specific locality and what that might look like. Also want to note that we have to comply with the Justice 40 initiative, which says that 40% of our overall benefits from these federal investments must flow to disadvantaged communities that have been defined federally as marginalized, underserved, or overburdened by pollution. And also the EPA has certain requirements for emission reductions. They have goals for solar ownership to create wealth building opportunities, as well as grid resilience. Okay, so that's just a really brief overview of our program overall. So now I'm going to dive into each one of these sub-programs. And I just want to acknowledge again that we do have a mix of folks on the call of people that probably want me to go way more into the weeds and people that think even what I'm going to talk about is way too in the weeds. So I'm going to try to keep that balance, but we'll have time for questions at the end if you do have any more technical or less technical questions. Okay, so jumping in, our first subprogram that I'll mention is single family direct ownership. We have allocated $24 million in capacity-based grants for this subprogram, up to $7,500 per household. And in addition, we have $5 million that will be used for eligible enabling upgrades. And these upgrades could be things such as a re-roof, it could be an electrical box upgrade, tree trimming, or health and safety sort of upgrades needed in order for a household to go solar. And that would be for households earning up to 80% area median income. We also will see, as we will for all of our programs, a 20% bill savings for their monthly payments compared to their electricity bill payments. And this program will also work to establish a network of certified solar installers and lenders for this sub-program. So a little bit more specifics here. We expect to have a program administrator over this program, so they will be the ones working directly with installers and lenders that will meet our guidelines that we establish. And this funding again benefits single-family homeowners that earn low income or are living in a disadvantaged community. So if you're a Virginia resident, you're probably wondering, how does this actually work? A lot of those guidelines and specific timelines for giving out funds have not been developed, and I'm going to go more into timelines at the end of the presentation. However, kind of generally, homeowners that qualify for this program would receive a grant to buy down the cost of their solar system, and the rest of that cost would be funded through a solar loan or covered by solar loan. And Virginia Energy will be exploring options for no or low credit financing. And homeowners that participate in this sub-program will need to have some sort of taxable liability to qualify for the investment tax credit through the federal government. So basically that means the homeowner would need to be paying some taxes to the federal government every year. So we know that this program will be the relatively higher end of income for our programs, since owners would still need to be able to receive the ITC, the investment tax credit, to reach the EPA's goals of 20% savings. And I'll also note we've reduced the size of this sub-program compared to our original application, because even though we want to promote solar ownership and wealth building, we recognize that there are some limitations to who may be able to participate in this program. So I'm going to move on next to our other single family program, which is single family third party ownership. For this program, we have 16 million in capacity based grants up to 5,500 per household. Again, an additional 5 million will be used for enabling upgrades like the ones I mentioned before. And like every program, 20% bill savings is required for the average participant. And for this sub-program, we'll be establishing a network of certified power purchase agreement and lease providers across the state. So this program, like the direct ownership program, will also be administered by a hired program administrator that will oversee a network of certified solar power purchase agreement or PPA and lease providers who can meet the established Solar for All guidelines. And again, this funding will benefit Virginia single-family homeowners earning a low income or living in a disadvantaged community. So again, if you're a resident, in a little bit more plain language, how is this going to work? You might not have heard of this model. Power purchase agreements and leases are fairly newly legal in Virginia. But essentially, this model works well for homeowners that don't want to purchase a solar system, and instead they will rent a solar system through a solar provider. The resident would pay the solar provider a monthly bill that will be cheaper than their current electric bill. And this model is helpful for residents that may have credit issues or low or no taxable liability, so they can't receive the investment tax credit, or those who don't have maybe capacity to figure out future maintenance issues, etc. So that's our two single family programs. I'm going to move on to our multifamily program. So multifamily solar plus storage. And I just want to start off by saying that multifamily we know is a very complex market segment with a diversity of public and private funding sources, building sizes, types of owners and developers, as well as energy metering arrangements, which can all change the way that solar would work. And we know this segment hasn't been extensively built out yet in Virginia, but we know that this means Solar for All has an opportunity to hopefully kick off and begin to transform this market segment. So for this sub-program, we have 28 million in a revolving loan fund for low-cost bridge and permanent loans for new on-site solar at multifamily affordable housing properties. Again, we have a fund of 5 million for enabling upgrades, and we also have a fund of 8 million for capacity-based grants for battery energy storage. And these will be provided to select projects depending on the need, the resilience of the grid nearby, and other factors that we'll determine during the planning period. So again, this program will be administered by a hired program administrator. And this funding ultimately will benefit residents, renters of these multifamily properties. But the funding will be able to flow through nonprofit and tax exempt owners of housing properties with 4 or more units, where the rents don't exceed 30% of 80% AMI in that locality. And at least half of those units need to have an active affordability covenant. And again, big picture, this basically means that these owners of multifamily properties may receive a loan for up to 50% of project costs on new on-site solar for affordable multifamily properties. And it's important to note, as I mentioned, there's different energy metering arrangements for multifamily. Whether it's a master metered property or individually metered, owners will be required to submit plans for delivering the benefits of at least 20% annual electricity costs to the property, whether or not the tenant is directly, if it's master metered, we need to show that they're getting that 20% benefit still. And allowable benefits will align with the Housing and Urban Development's guidance on the treatment of solar benefits. So these could be things like bill credits for the value of their solar savings, direct cash benefits, or savings funded building upgrades. And we're still getting more clarity from the EPA on what those types of building upgrades could be. And again, like I've been saying, residents will still see 20% savings, and this program is aimed more at renters in these multifamily properties. Okay, so moving on to another more renter-focused program, Shared Solar. So for Shared Solar, we will see 25 million in grants for community-scale solar projects. These projects must be between 250 kilowatts and 5 megawatts. We must see a minimum of 49% low-income subscribers in these projects. And again, they must deliver at least 20% bill savings to those low-income subscribers. This program will be administered internally by Virginia Energy, and the applicants will be those who are developing shared solar programs. The funding will eventually benefit Virginia residents that earn less than 80% AMI. And if you're a resident, you may not have heard of shared solar. So shared solar is essentially solar that is offsite. It's not on your property. So you don't need to actually install solar if you're a renter on your roof, or if you're a homeowner on, it's not actually located where you live. It's somewhere else, and you get to benefit from the electricity it produces. However, it's important to note it's not feasible in all areas or utilities, but it is a great way for those who can't install solar and still want to participate in the benefits of solar. Again, this is aimed at renters who are earning less than 80% area median income. And again, facilities do need to have 49% low-income subscribers. And for those of you who are in the shared solar industry, we've been getting a lot of questions of how we plan to operate around existing shared solar limitations. And that's something that we will finalize during the planning period. We have several options, whether we provide deeper savings to those projects that are currently in the queue, or potentially more beneficially helping to ensure that low-income participants can participate in our secondary cap, where minimum bill exemptions are not as certain for some utility territories. So that's something that we will be working hopefully with stakeholders to determine during the planning period. All right, so moving into the next subprogram, Grid Infrastructure and Interconnection Fund. We will have 9 million in grants and or loans as to be determined during the planning period to cover interconnection related or front of the meter grid infrastructure. And so if you're not in the industry, this may not make sense, but basically some residential serving installations may be subject to significant additional expenses if distribution and transmission related infrastructure upgrades are necessary to basically mitigate voltage or power quality or safety related to a solar installation. And so some of these larger systems face additional challenges and costs. And so we're hoping that this fund will be able to help projects move forward that maybe otherwise would not have been able to due to these high interconnection and infrastructure costs. This fund will be administered by Virginia Energy, and we will have technical support by a hired technical advisor that will help with the design and administration of this fund, including technical review of applications that we receive for this fund. We're expecting the funding to benefit multifamily or shared solar projects that have these sorts of interconnection or infrastructure cost issues. Okay, moving on to workforce development. So we will have a workforce development program that will promote high quality jobs in the residential serving solar industry by investing 4.5 million into a new solar workforce development program. We will also be launching a clean energy business accelerator that will be focused on serving disadvantaged communities. And along with all these things, our workforce development will work to ensure that we're able to comply with Davis-Bacon and related acts, as well as Build America, Buy America, or BABA, that is required for certain sub-programs within Solar for All. We also have a marketing, education, and outreach, $4.5 million that will be channeled into a new statewide one-stop shop for energy programs, marketing, and outreach. And this will serve as a central hub for all consumers and contractors to understand what programs are available, how they may be able to participate, what they qualify for. And this isn't just for Solar for All. This will cover all different programs in our portfolio, which includes home energy rebates, weatherization assistance, other charging programs, and those sorts of things will also be included in this marketing, education, and outreach. Of course, we'll have a website, but this will also include outreach to local governments, events, and other types of outreach like that in person. Okay. And I didn't want to not mention a variety of other topics that we will need to be exploring through the planning period, which I'll get into our timeline for the planning period next. So we, of course, need to determine a lot of different things about these, but we'll be going through consumer protections, different financing mechanisms, as well as solar renewable energy certificate utilization, or SRECs. We'll need to work out our reporting, evaluation, and compliance for the federal grant, as well as building out guidelines for solar developer and installer requirements for participation in the program. We'll have to define what types of projects will be able to get interconnection funds. So looking through those different options and how much they cost. We'll also be looking into pre-development support, especially for our multifamily sub-program. Okay. So that was a very brief overview of all of our sub-programs. I realize that was probably a lot of dense information in a short amount of time, but it looks like we'll have a lot of time for questions at the end. Briefly, I wanted to mention our planning period timeline. So we are waiting for our review of as I mentioned, of our work plan from the EPA, and we're hoping to have our work plan finalized and approved by December of this year. And once that's approved, that would kick off our 1-year long planning period. And so this is our kind of brief overview of what we expect to be doing during the planning period. So in Q1, kind of our major thing that we need to be working on will be developing program guidelines for each of our sub-programs. And then in Q2, once we have those program guidelines developed through hopefully a lot of stakeholder engagement with folks on this call, we will be posting requests for proposals, RFPs for program administrators for those externally managed programs that I mentioned earlier. In Q3, we will be finalizing those contracts with program admins, and those program admins will be helping us to create requirements for solar developers and installers, PPA, power purchase agreement providers, and lease providers. We'll also open our workforce development program at that time. And then in Q4, that's when we'll be able to create and finalize our network of developers, installers, as well as what processes are around that, and finalize marketing and outreach opportunities, as well as consumer protections and many other things on that list that I had mentioned previously. Okay, so As I said, a year for our planning period, which means hopefully December 2025, assuming the timeline moves forward with the EPA as we hope, we will be ready to start our program. And so in January 2026 is when we expect applications for shared solar and grid interconnection, the Grid Interconnection Fund to open, as well as grants for single family. So if you are a resident and you're interested in getting funding through Solar for All, January 2026 is when we're looking at that funding to actually be available, as well as loans for multifamily would become available. And we do have 5 years total. So once we kick off implementation in January 2026, we will have 4 years to get all of our funding out the door, which sounds like a long time, but also a very short time. And so we'll be working hard during the planning period to make sure we're able to do that. All right, so I think I talked faster than in my preparation for this, but I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and comments, but I do want to highlight before we get there opportunities for engagement. And there's kind of 3 main opportunities at this point for engagement. One, please join our mailing list if you haven't already. It's on the Virginia Energy Solar for All website. There's a drop down and you can put in your information there. I'll show you the page in a second. But through the mailing list, we'll be sending out opportunities for specific stakeholder engagement and listening sessions coming up, where we'll be hopefully using your feedback to prepare our program guidelines. So please join the mailing list if you're interested in participating there. Also, join the Solar for All and/or Workforce Advisory Group. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, but those letters of interest are due by October 31st. So next Thursday, I believe. So if you haven't already submitted a letter and you're interested, you have a week to send that in. And as I mentioned in the timeline, requests for proposals or RFPs for program administrators and technical advisor for the Grid Infrastructure Fund are expected to be released next year at some point in Q2. And then, as I said, program administrators would then seek qualified contractors for direct ownership and leasing and the other programs in late 2025. So depending on who you work for, that would probably be helpful to know as we move forward. So as I said, I do want to mention the Solar for All Advisory Group. I've gotten a lot of questions from folks that are interested of kind of where, if they can participate, if they want to apply for some of these positions that I just mentioned. And we did receive feedback from the Attorney General's office. So the official guidance is that if you are a for-profit entity, or work for a for-profit entity that hopes to receive Solar for All funds. For example, a for-profit solar developer, installer, if you work for someone that could be a program administrator or a subrecipient for Solar for All, you may not participate in the advisory group. Nonprofit, so 501c3 organizations that receive funds through Solar for All may still participate in the advisory group. It's important to note industry associations. So for example, the Solar Energy Industry Association could participate as long as the representative that attends the Solar for All meetings does not own or work for a for-profit company that would receive Solar for All funds. So I just wanted to put that out there first because I've been getting lots of questions about that. So that's the official guidance we have from the Attorney General's office. But generally, this board will be providing input on financial and technical assistance offerings for Solar for All, as well as marketing, education, and outreach, ongoing program evaluation, and adjustments to the program and program governance. We're hoping to have 10 to 15 participants, and we're looking for folks from consumer advocacy groups, solar developers or installers and/or industry associations, as I mentioned, utilities, co-ops, IOUs, financial institutions or CDFIs, low-income or need-based service providers and/or program managers, as well as low-income and disadvantaged community-serving community-based organizations, tribal nations, and citizen representatives. And I mentioned here that there is a stipend for participation. We are still finalizing what those stipends will look like, but we expect that select participants, including those nonprofit and citizen representatives, would be eligible to receive a stipend to cover travel expenses. And mentioning that, we also expect the majority of these meetings to be held in person, with select meetings on Teams, and that's just a state requirement for these public boards. So if we have any more questions on the Solar for All Advisory Group, I'm happy to answer them at the end. And again, I just wanted to show how to sign up for the mailing list. So on our website, which we can drop a link in the chat as well, you can sign up for the mailing list, and that's where we'll be sending out future opportunities for engagement. So please sign up there. And I think that's my last slide. So thank you so much for listening, and I would love to open it up for public comment and any questions.
Thanks, Callie. That's a lot of great information. We do have a few questions, so I can verbalize those first. And then I do think that folks are able to maybe raise a hand, and then we can unmute you. All right, so first question we've got is, will homeowners have gone through a weatherization program prior to getting solar to qualify?
At this point, we do not have any sort of qualification that you will have had to go through weatherization program to qualify. I think that we're trying to figure out how all of these different programs will layer and overlap through the planning period. And that's something that we hope to do, but at this point, there is no sort of qualification for or requirement of that.
Thank you. And will there be certain qualifications such as roof age that could disqualify somebody?
As I mentioned, for all of the different funds that the subprograms we do have funding for enabling upgrades. And so we're hoping that roof age isn't something that would disqualify our participant from being eligible for the program. Of course, it's not going to be able to re-roof everyone's roof. So we may need to create some sort of guidelines on how we're able to prioritize residents, but that shouldn't be something that disqualifies you.
Mhm. Thank you. All right. So this is from somebody else. Did you mention that homeowners who are above the AMI, I think probably referring to that low income 80% AMI threshold, may also qualify, about 20% of participants?
So it's important to note that for both of our single family programs, let me look at my slides to make sure I'm saying the right thing. We are expecting to be able to serve folks who are up to 100% AMI only if they live in a disadvantaged community. So correct me if I'm wrong, Bettina or Aaron, but I believe that for both the single family programs, that is how we defined it, but for the rest of the programs, it would be 80% or less.
Yes. And maybe you could just reference where the 20% figure, how that's relevant to the program.
Is that referring to the 20% bill savings?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, yes. So all program participants on average will have to receive 20% bill savings. So what we're thinking right now is, let's say you pay a $200 a month electricity bill. So the idea is that solar would be able to cut that. So you would only pay 80% of what you were currently paying with Solar for All. So saving 20% on your monthly bills.
And that would be net of any payments that you make, like a loan payment or a lease payment. Thank you. All righty. Somebody asked if the slides and recording will be shared afterward. Yes, posted to our website, which I also shared to sign up for the mailing list and see the request for letters of interest for the advisory group. All right, we've got a bunch of them coming in. Okay, here we go. The single family direct ownership program is it says will grant, but is expected to grant $7,500 per household. Besides loans, are there other mechanisms that may be used to pay for the remaining cost of the solar system?
I personally don't know if we've considered any other options at this point. I don't know if you have any ideas, Bettina or Aaron, but I think that financing is the main thing we're considering um, for the single family direct ownership.
Yeah, and let's see, Jeff, please raise your hand if you want to weigh in. Of course, that we also want to take full advantage of the ITC, as Kelly mentioned, and SREX.
Mhm.
Jeff, let's see if it is possible for him to unmute, maybe?
It should
Make a
be,
comment related to that?
hopefully.
Yeah, good
Oh,
morning,
great.
afternoon,
Hi.
sorry. Yeah, so, one of the options, I work with Habitat for Humanity as a partner, and we try to give the homeowners the opportunity to pay a contribution towards the solar. And so that would be like another part of the capital stack would be a homeowner contribution. So that's one example of what I'm referring to. There would probably be other examples.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sure.
All righty. Corey has a question about the types of panels.
Mhm.
Corey, are you able to unmute and ask your question or make a comment if you have thoughts on types of panels?
Yeah. Yes. How's everybody doing?
Hey.
Great.
So the reason I asked that is there's an American solar panel manufacturer opening in Virginia. So panels are all going to be domestic content produced here, right in Forest, Virginia, outside of Lynchburg. So the reason I asked that is with all the supply chain issues and having an American manufacturer is kind of just like a comment as well too. I mean, if you guys are going to require a certain type of panel to make sure customers are getting the correct panel, the correct stuff, and it's not junk that's coming from overseas that's going to break. So just knowing that, I think it could maybe part of the program is implementing an American made panel made by Virginians right here. So
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I will mention that as a part of the federal requirements, we do for I believe it's multifamily and the shared solar portion have to comply with Buy America, Build America. So those panels will actually be required to be American made. But I think that's a great suggestion for the other sub-programs as well.
Yeah, and even separately from domestically made, appreciate the comment around equipment quality standards. And I definitely envision that being a part of our program, in addition to contractor qualifications. Aaron, do you have something to add? Perfect. Okay, thanks, Corey. Next question is, can for-profit organizations stay updated on the happenings of the working group, even if not participating? Great question.
Yes. So the work group will be a public meeting, so anyone will be invited to attend. As I mentioned, most of them will be in person, so that would, you'd be welcome to come in person. And I believe we'll have meeting minutes that will be shared publicly as well. We're still working with the Attorney General's office on exactly what those requirements look like, but of course, you'd be welcome to attend.
Yeah, perfect. And all of those, sorry if you already said this, all of those have a public comment portion that would allow for like that two-way conversation,
Yes.
which we appreciate. All righty. Next question is regarding income qualifications. Would someone that meets 60% of state median income qualify even if they exceed 80% of area median income?
That's a good question. And I believe that the answer would be no, because we're going off of area median income. But if Aaron or Bettina know better, then please chime in.
I would say unless they are in a disadvantaged community and are participating in a program that does have that broader income eligibility allowance up to 100% of AMI.
Yes.
And Robert, if you have any thoughts on the implications of that, it's not a question that's come up, so appreciate that. Our next question is, will grants, Robert, go ahead.
let me unmute. Yes, no, because we do a lot of work in Southwest Virginia, and we've always observed this dichotomy, and I'll give props to our utility partners that recognize this. This is great because we do have that balance of folks who qualify, who have Northern Virginia, very high income, there's a very high baseline income. So 80% AMI is a great qualification. Whereas Southwest Virginia, that area median income is low enough so that 60% SMI tends to be what we qualify folks for the federal weatherization programs. And that's where that question was coming from. I know that there's a crossover, I think like Charlottesville area or some of the northern Shenandoah valleys, kind of they're pretty on par. But, the further you get away from pretty much the I-95 corridor.
Mm. That's helpful. And I know we've mentioned the ability to stack programs. So I think that program or like income qualification is something that we're still going to need to work through.
Yeah, thank you. Alrighty, next question. Will grants be available for homeowners to purchase batteries to store their excess solar energy?
At this point, we are not considering batteries for single family, but we will have battery options, as I mentioned, for multifamily. And again, what types of multifamily buildings will be eligible is something we'll figure out in the planning period.
Thank you. All right, I see, Corey, you have an additional comment around American Made, mentioning that plant that is coming by the end of 2025. Thanks for elevating that. Our next question is, do you envision a separate program administrator for each subprogram or one administrator for all the subprograms? Or are you open to various potential arrangements depending on how the procurement process plays out? And somebody has thumbs up that one.
Yes. I think that as this person said, we're open to different arrangements. And I believe we have not began the RFP process at all, but I think we have considered saying that we are open to someone applying for one or multiple of these administrator positions.
Yeah, good question. Alrighty, next question. Can you share any more about where the 25 million for shared solar will go?
I guess maybe Aaron, do you want to chime in on a little bit more about shared solar?
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it on your slide, is that the funding will go directly to subscriber organizations that are developing projects and offering subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
So Kristen, feel free to come off mute if you have thoughts. And I think one thing that wasn't said there was any kind of existing geographic targeting beyond, of course, our federal compliance with the Federal Justice 48 requirement, which we will be keeping in mind for all of our sub-programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something I didn't mention on the slide, but I can mention now is that we're expecting to have maybe like a formula to figure out what types of shared solar programs we are able to support. And that may include the location of the shared solar facility, with whether or not it's within a disadvantaged area. Another thing we've talked about, and again, this is not actually developed at all yet, but is potentially if the shared solar facility is on a brownfield, or those types of things may go into that formula of figuring out who will qualify for the funding.
Thank you. All right. Next person notes that I saw the explicit mention for multifamily homes, but will the program fund storage on single family homes? I think you've said no currently.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Next question is, can you speak a bit more about the workforce development program and what kind of compliance assistance they will provide? Will they oversee DBA BABA compliance for all the Solar for All programs, or will PAs have compliance responsibilities for their respective programs?
Bettina, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say on compliance, that will be a partnership. So I haven't been directly involved in Davis-Bacon compliance, but my understanding is it is really a partnership between the program administrator and, of course, the contractors that are providing information to the administrators for aggregation and reporting on the required timeline. So the workforce development program, two parts to that. One is a kind of financial support for training of workers that is to be designed. We have learned a lot about workforce development and a direction we might want to head with this program through our energy efficiency workforce development program development. But we will do some more analysis and planning for solar workforce development for this program. In terms of compliance assistance, I think that probably gets more to the Small Business Accelerator program that we will be partnering with the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity on. They do provide support to small businesses, especially small women and minority-owned businesses, to expand their businesses, to understand government procurement policies and understand government compliance. And so while I hadn't explicitly thought about it, I think that actually seems like a really great opportunity for that partnership with small business and supplier diversity. But Dima, if you have other suggestions or thoughts, would welcome you to come off mute and provide them.
Yeah, thank you. That was really helpful, and I think it did answer my question. I guess where I was coming from is, if we're engaging contractor networks, making sure that those participants understand the requirements. So I was wondering if there would be overlap between the workforce development program and contractors participating in the sub programs and how that would be facilitated. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate just that note to be aware of contractor implications of things like Davis-Bacon and federal compliance that they might not be familiar with, especially for smaller contractors. And how do we support that? I appreciate that. Thank you. All righty. Awesome. Next question. The 20% savings, is that the dollar amount on the bill or energy usage?
I believe it's the dollar amount on the bill. So we're looking for you to save 20% off of what you are currently paying.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. And for the revolving loan options, would that provide funds that could be used to enable program extension beyond 2029? Question.
Yes. So we've been working through this question, and loan options will be available beyond the program period. We'll have to have a closeout agreement. I don't know about providing additional funds beyond the end of the program. I don't know if Bettina wants to jump in on that. I think that's maybe still a question.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. No, I think you were definitely getting at it. So fortunately, loans that are extended do not need to be repaid within the Solar for All period of performance. So by 2029, we can have loans that are repaid long after that. How that program income, that repayment is used after the official performance period, that will be in our closeout agreement with EPA. And generally speaking, that what I would anticipate is that they say, we need to continue using this fund for the same type of projects, maybe with some tweaks based on what we've learned in the future. So in that way, it is a program extension. All right, and I realize I'm in the chat, but we've had people very patiently waiting with their hands up. So maybe, I think it was Steve that was first. Steve Ricketts, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah,
And thanks, Callie, for such an expert kind of run through of a sprawling subject. I'm looking over the garden fence from Kentucky. I represent the State Solar Association. Love what you're doing here. Particularly, I'd like to get a bit more detail on the Clean Energy Business Accelerator kind of idea, because a lot of our money is going to the east of the state where there is almost zero installer coverage. So development's going to be very interesting. Can you speak a little bit more to what you're thinking of there?
Yeah, definitely. I think Bettina's worked with this the most. So do you want to take that one?
Yes. Steve, the answer is that we are enthusiastic about partnering more with the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. Our understanding is that they are already offering, this type of business startup support and expansion support, sometimes just one-on-one consultation and sometimes in more of a cohort for similar types of businesses who are like at a similar growth stage. And so we want to partner with them and they want to partner with us to do that for solar businesses. So what exactly that entails? It is TBD, and if you have thoughts on what would be most useful, would welcome those.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I'd say that you've got such a lot of information here that's relevant to all of us in this area. So we would be crazy if we don't find a way of sharing best practice over the next kind of few years.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for enabling that. Alrighty, our next question is from Armando, who has also been patiently waiting with his hand up or their hand up. Would you like to go ahead? And just verbalize the questions that you put in the chat?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the first question would be, sorry, just.
I can also remind you if you lost track of them. Can you still hear us? Maybe I'll just go ahead and read what's in the chat. Oh, there we go. Armando?
I'm sorry for the issues here. Been having problems with audio again. I've been thinking about what does the SFA fund actually cover in terms of interconnection? What kind of equipment may those funds cover? That's the first question. And the second question would be around the fund for the Solar for All. If you have been thinking of having a different type of program from what is available, or is the same, staying on that track? I would argue that sort of setting up your own program, like through the Solar for All funds, having a specific program may provide more flexibility, because the way the shared solar program right now is set up just sort of limits how many low and moderate income one can subscribe. So I'm not really sure how you're thinking about the interaction with the program structure that is currently available, that is currently in place, and how to optimize funds in a way that basically serves the most low-income residents as possible. And those are my two questions.
Great. Thank you, Armando. I think the first question is easy because we don't have the answer yet. So I think, as I mentioned, we'll be working with a technical advisor that we expect to procure competitively in Q2 of next year. And they will be helping us to define what types of projects will be eligible for this grid interconnection and infrastructure fund. Aaron, do you want to answer the shared solar portion of his question?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I'll just acknowledge like both of your questions are hitting on kind of key policy questions. There's a lot of proceedings in the State Corporation Commission around interconnection costs and things like, are direct transfer trip costs appropriate or not? So we're certainly following, and some of those decisions will be dependent on some other decisions made at other levels, and the same goes with the shared solar program, there is some additional considerations around bill credits and minimum bills for the existing shared solar program that will impact how this program will work. I think as of right now, we are primarily envisioning kind of fitting into the existing program, shared solar program, versus creating a new program. But do recognize that there are capacity constraints, to your point, that may limit the overall scale of it.
Perfect. And there's one more related question, so I'll just go ahead and verbalize that one. Related to shared solar, would consideration be given to providing a higher level incentive / funding to subscriber organizations that offer a higher bill savings discount over and beyond the 20% threshold?
I think that could be something that's a part of our formula that we kind of use to figure out, you know, how much we're able to give. So I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I agree with that. All righty. Next question, a bit longer. Will there be more than one agency as an administrative entity for a single family for a specific county or territory? Will the weatherization agency in that area be the one responsible, since many of them would be their clients already? Especially when it comes to older clients, they build a trust with us. So it sounds like this person is from a weatherization agency. As an agency, and sometimes see solar programs as a scam with a lot of that going around.
I think that's a great question, and I think that it's also something we haven't answered yet, is kind of how this structure will look. And I think that maybe Bettina can jump in, but I think that you know, that is to be determined still, and obviously we'll welcome insight and feedback on that in the future.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I agree with that, and agree that right now there's a recognition of how successful and established the weatherization assistance program is, and recognize that trust will be incredibly important for the success of Solar for All. So the question is, how do we partner for mutual benefit for both programs? And I think we do want to, while we're not putting funding from this program into energy efficiency, we recognize that there is energy efficiency available from weatherization, from other federal funds that are coming. And we certainly are approaching all of the programs that we are involved with from the perspective of how do we help people access all of the above to maximize bill savings. Alrighty, I know we're getting close to the end of our time, and honestly, we're getting through most of the questions, so I'll just keep going. Following up on storage for single family, if the homeowner could find funding for adding storage, would that be permissible?
I can't see why not. The only issue that I can foresee is that the EPA does have this 20% savings requirement. And so if they were, for example, not able to fund all of the storage or needed to include that in their solar loan for direct ownership, for example, and that would change the numbers on their ability to do that 20% savings, that might cause some issues.
Yeah, good point. Another question around storage is, would the program be open to providing some funding for single family battery storage?
I mean, I don't imagine that we're closed off to very much anything at this point. I think
Right.
I think we're excited to hear from all of you all and you know, residents and folks that would participate if that's something that is really needed. However, as I just said, I think that would be pretty difficult to do just because of the requirement for the 20% savings.
Yep. And then relatedly, are we anticipating battery energy storage will be a part of the shared solar program?
At this point, no.
Just multifamily for now. Alrighty, our last question is, in terms of project build out and timelines, do you have a view on how installer capacity matches needed project/array numbers?
I'm not sure I totally understand that question, but
I think part of this question is probably around workforce readiness and availability, meaning contractors as well as installers and other workers. If that's the case, Steve, I think that's a great question. And we have done some solar workforce analysis, but we need to do more in preparation for this program. And that's really going to help inform our workforce development grant usage.
definitely.
So hopefully that gets at your question. Last question is shared solar from for-profit utilities under consideration as well as nonprofit rural co-ops?
Do you want to take that, Aaron?
Yeah. So yeah, to your question, generally that's called like community solar in Virginia, which is related. And there are several rural co-ops, there are several municipal utilities, and Dominion does have a small community solar program. Those are not excluded from.
Great. This concludes the questions. Those are really great questions. Thank you, everybody. And comments.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And again, please sign up for the mailing list. We'll have options for more of us listening and listening to you all and seeing what's needed in the future. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Callie. Bye, everyone.